Welcome to The Hill's Coronavirus Report. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Each day we are interviewing consequential leaders in the battle against the coronavirus. Interconnectivity and intersectionality are two terms that have particular weight at this moment. We've seen firsthand how combating this disease is interconnected with our food supply and the supply chain in general. That science and nature intersect as it's determined whether virus is man-made or zoonotic. I'm getting a real vocabulary test in this. One organization's members are developing and researching products for many interconnected fields, including agriculture, healthcare, and industrial biotech products. Recently, the president of the Biotechnology Innovation Organization said, quote, COVID-19 highlights the interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health. While it would not have prevented the current pandemic, animal biotechnology holds enormous potential to safeguard society from future zoonotic diseases that frequently exact high economic and health costs. Bio has also been publishing an excellent daily newsletter titled Good Day Bio, which talks about the road to a vaccine, among other issues. One of the best sources I know to stay up on what is happening in the biopharmaceutical arena with regards to combating the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Jim Greenwood, a former member of Congress, is the president and CEO of BIO. BIO represents more than 1,000 biotech, academic, and related organizations over 30 countries. Welcome, Jim. It's good to talk to you.
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
So I've been reading Road to a Vaccine, and in your daily reports, there's an enormous array of information about the very quick progress in big firms, small firms, what's going on out there. Can you give us a snapshot of what that road to a vaccine looks like?
Well, there are probably 100 vaccine projects going on right now around the world. If you look at it most pessimistically, you would say, well, it can take 10, 15 years to make a vaccine. There are some viruses for which we've never succeeded in making a vaccine. Think about HIV, herpes, never done. And we've never developed a vaccine to thwart a coronavirus. So that's the bad news. The good news is the world has never, ever seen a situation in which this much science and these many companies, large and small, are arrayed against one target. And so I believe that we will succeed not only in developing good therapeutics, antivirals, treatments, and ultimately vaccines. And I think that will be sooner than most people think.
You know, some people have criticized the process of everyone rushing out there, all of this going on as one that's chaos. In fact, the New York Times has called it chaos. Some have said that chaos is necessary to bend the curve, you will, of how long it takes to get to that, creative therapeutic, that breakthrough. I'm interested in whether you think it's chaos, whether there should be more order than there is now, or are things going the right direction?
Right. I have to say editorially, I've been asking the editorial board of New York Times to talk to us for many, many years, and they haven't. So, any case, it's not chaos. In fact, the first thing that Bio did when this whole thing began in mid-February was send a letter to all 800 of our biotech members who are in the drug discovery business, asking which of them have the scientific capacity, the drug development experience, and or the manufacturing capacity to get involved in fighting COVID. About 60 of our companies have responded in the affirmative. And then we held in mid-March a virtual summit with 500 people, including from the industry as well as from the government. And we have what we call the Bio Coronavirus Collaboration Initiative, which is designed to make sure that we're not in chaos, that we share what we're doing, we share data, we coordinate like never before. And we're doing that globally. This morning, I was on a call with biotech associations from all over the world, coordinating our efforts there. So it's not chaos at all. It's just a lot of terrific, smart shots on goal.
Now, I know your members are very diverse. I'm fascinated by the biotech world myself, and there are some very, very big players out there. Most of your members are small. And I'm interested in innovation at that small firm level, and what the prospects are that we may be shocked that one of those small firms may come up with the thing that kills this virus.
Sure. Let me give you some data. If you take the therapeutics, the antivirals, and the vaccine projects, there are about 400 of them occurring globally. 52% of them are American companies, And of those, 70% are small companies. So as always is the case, a lot of the innovation is occurring at the small company level. Some big companies are in it as well, obviously. But yes, you're quite right. It wouldn't surprise me if it turns out to be a small American biotech company that develops the first vaccine.
Now, Jim, I know you're a former member of Congress. You've been both on the association side. You've also been a member of Congress. I know you've been worried about biodefense issues for a long time. You were on a bipartisan commission of biodefense that worried about this kind of pandemic coming before. I'd like to ask you something uncomfortable. Can you grade the literacy of your former colleagues right now? Are they making the right decisions? Do they understand the seriousness of the moment? Because if I were to editorialize on this moment, I see a lot of politics still playing out. It has not focused the mind as much as I would have thought to end political shenanigans, maybe on both sides, but I'm interested in how you see it.
Well, if I were to editorialize, I would begin by saying that unfortunately, not enough members of Congress and not enough people in this administration and previous ones have taken seriously the inevitability of a global pandemic. You referenced the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, co-chaired by Tom Ridge, the former Secretary of Homeland Security, and former Senator Joe Lieberman. I serve on it. Tom Daschle, former senator, serves on it. And in October of 2015, we put out a blueprint for biodefense. And we said, there will be a global pandemic. Here are some things you should do. Immediately appoint the vice president to be in charge of planning for that pandemic, not responding after it happens, but planning for it years in advance. That didn't happen. We said in each urban area, let's create a system of stratified hospitals, decide in each area, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, et cetera, which will be the hospital best equipped first to take the first wave of patients from the pandemic. And let's make sure they have huge backlog storage capacities and stockpiles of ventilators, PPE, gloves, masks, everything. And then have the next hospital down the line prepared. So there was much we could have done. People said, well, it's expensive. We wanted Medicare to pay for all that equipment. People say, well, it's pretty expensive. Well, how expensive is the trillions of dollars that we've spent and the hundreds of thousands of lives that have been lost? So we said we talked about the 1912 or 1918 Spanish flu, and I think a lot of people in politics said, well, it's 100 years ago. We don't really know if one's going to happen or not. Well, now we know.
Well, I've interviewed recently Senator Chris Coons, former Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist, Donna Shalala, the former Secretary of Health and Human Services, now in the House, and they've all said the same thing. They said, look, we've known and been warned for a long time that a very deadly pandemic. Chris Coons thinks, one, that this is a foreshock of a more deadly likely virus in the future that spreads like a cold but has the lethality of Ebola, not to be hyperbolic about it, but those were his words. And do you think that there will be enough political will after what we're seeing today that will begin planning appropriately for the next big pandemic shock?
Yeah, well, Congress is exquisitely good at locking barns after horses are gone. So I think absolutely, since the blueprints have been sitting there for years, they'll take them out, dust them off, and say, okay, let's get ready for the next one. We hope and pray that that's the case. It's hard to imagine that having gone through what we're going through now, that Congress wouldn't come back and say, oh, now what was it that we were supposed to do? And I'm not saying Congress did nothing. Congress did some things, but obviously not enough.
Well, Jim, when you and I met, I think it was last June, you made a very provocative statement. You worried that the investment in science, that the commitment to science in this country at the national level was lapsing, so that innovation and the kind of life-saving cures that would come out of the ecosystem of our pharmaceutical world were really going to be negatively impacted, and we would see that fall back. And we're now at a moment where people are seeing that the pharmaceutical industry, the biopharmaceutical industry, is one of the key hopes for them. Do you think that calculus, that equilibrium between the criticism of the pharmaceutical industry has changed because of the incident, of the timing that we're in now?
Well, what's been remarkable about the moment in history we're in right now is that the science has never been better. I mean, science always gets better because it builds upon itself. But when you think about gene therapy and cell therapy and immunotherapy and the ability to use CRISPR-Cas9, et cetera, our capability of defeating every disease known to man has never been greater. At the same time, we face the most harsh political headwinds that the industry has ever faced. People are angry at the drug industry. Now, in my opinion, what they're really angry about is the fact that their insurers impose larger and larger deductibles on them. So when they go to the drugstore, they end up paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars that they may not have, or worse yet, they leave their drug behind. So what I would hope comes out of this is as people watch, praying every day, when are we going to get treatments? When are we going to get vaccines? That it will be completely visible that the biopharmaceutical industry, large, middle size, and small, are working 24/7, and we will solve this problem. We will save lives by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions. And I hope there's a little bit more of a hesitancy to condemn the industry and a little bit more interest in figuring out how do we actually protect patients about with regard to what they're forced to pay out of their pockets.
When we see vaccines and antivirals develop, and I say plural because it looks like we may have multiple responses to this kind of thing, do you think your industry that you represent needs to do anything different by way of how costs are figured out, how accessibility is managed? Those are the two big dilemmas that I think that face the industry are cost and accessibility. Can everybody who needs this get it as opposed to just those who can pay for it?
So I'm absolutely certain that the industry will do everything in its power to make sure that no one goes without this vaccine, the upcoming vaccines, because they can't afford what's required to come out from their pocket. That's a moral principle by which we should live, and I think that you'll see that in spades here. But again, I have to remind everyone, it's not just about what the price is, it's about what comes out of pocket. So let's make sure that we don't have this ever-increasing deductibles that cause people not to be able to afford the health care that they need.
You run one of the biggest organizations that's sort of its own intelligence establishment when it comes to viruses. How do they look at how this unfolded in China and with the WHO, which is so much in the news now about the origins and about the importance of being transparent with data? It looks like nobody was transparent early on, and it looks like even when, I'd said in an earlier show I did that it turns out the White House and the President of the United States were alerted on January 3rd rather than the end of January on some of this. So even when the signals were there, sometimes they weren't grabbed quickly enough. But you folks are another form of intelligence establishment. How do you look at how this unfolded and who the villains are?
Well, the villain's the virus. Let's start there. Look, the virus would have been in the bat no matter what anybody did. The virus, if you assume it jumped from a bat to a human, and I'm not making any guesses about whether that's exactly what happened or whether it came from the laboratory. I think we just don't know. But having said that, I think the Chinese were slow to share with the world and with their own people what was going on. That is the nature of a totalitarian state. I think that we were slow to respond in some regards, and there were too many people who were downplaying the severity of this thing. And when you have data that showed about a month or so ago that when you ask people, do you think someone you love or someone you know will have the COVID-19 disease? It was like 35% of Republicans said yes, and 70% of Democrats said yes. So, and I'm a Republican. And so when we get to the point where a global pandemic becomes a subject of partisanship, that's a real sign that our whole electoral system needs to change.
Just finally, Jim, in our last moment here, and I don't know how to better put this, I've got family in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, just north of Tulsa, and the coronavirus has hit everywhere in the country in places that you were very surprised that it went there. I'd like you to speak to someone in Bartlesville and tell them what BIO and your members, how they're going to change this environment and change their lives.
Well, I think what the biotechnology industry is going to do for everyone, Oklahoma and across the world, is first make sure we have the best diagnostics so we can sort out those people who have been exposed to the virus and have recovered and those who have not. We're going to develop antivirals to stop the ability, like remdesivir. I think you'll be seeing that used earlier in the course of the disease. It will stop the virus from replicating inside your body once you're infected, and we'll have treatments to treat the symptoms. So through diagnostic and good therapies, good treatments, people will begin to inch their way back to normalcy. And then we'll have a vaccine, whether that's 9 months from now or 18 months from now, we don't know. But we'll have a vaccine that eventually will protect all of us, everyone on the planet, so that we can put this officially behind us in history and then prepare better for the next pandemic, which will come.
Well, Jim, I'm going to look forward to having you back as we move further down the road to a vaccine. I'm going to keep looking forward to reading Good Day Bio, and I'm going to go check out your awesome podcast and look for that right after. So thank you very much, Jim Greenwood, for joining us today. And thank you all for joining me today. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Steve Clemons. Be well.